I want to welcome you to the authors at Google, and tonight we're talking about Going Supernova, the bold paths of 101 Superachievers. And we have the Superachiever Superstar panel tonight with us, and we're about to introduce them. First, though, I want to get started with a few very, very quick thank yous. I cannot start any of these without thanking the woman who graces this cover, Patty Wagstaff, one of the greatest aerobatic pilots in the world. And on the back cover, my friend and someone who helped me with the story template, pilot Ronald Wayne Trumbull. Thank you out there in Hawaii. So with that said, there are also several people tonight who made tonight possible, and you're going to be hearing from Jeff Rozic in a moment, who is our host and very dear friend and someone that I admire tremendously, and he's helping teach me how to be more googly, and I appreciate that. I also want to especially thank the Googlers that are here tonight. What a great company, what an iconic brand. It's very exciting. What we like to do at these talks is really feature the people who are in the book. The purpose behind the book is that I do believe that superachievement is something you can emulate. So if you could have an example of the most extraordinary people out there doing the most incredible, phenomenal, game-changing, paradigm-shifting, curve-jumping, right? I learned that from Guy Kawasaki, who, by the way, is my mentor and someone that there would be no book without. That's what tonight's about, is saluting people like that so that you can emulate their mindset, and you're going to get to hear some previews of their story. And of course, I cannot start without thanking Keith Powers, someone that I look up to tremendously. Keith, this book would not probably have half the people in it if it wasn't Keith who reached out to his golden Rolodex and asked people and introduced me to people like Jenny and made tonight possible. And I welcome his wife, who's here tonight, Lynn Powers, and their beautiful daughter, Harmony, who are here. So thank you so much. And with all of that said, a few words from our host, Jeff Rozic, before we get started. So thank you all for coming out tonight.
Hi, everyone. I am your Google host, and that's all I am as far as hosts go. I work at Google, and we'll talk a little bit more about my little story later. I'm truly humbled to be on this panel of supernovas. And I just want to thank you all for coming tonight after hours, of course, those of you who work here on campus, those who traveled from all across the Bay Area to be part of this book event and hear from all these very inspiring and educating people with us. Molly was one of my business school professors almost 10 years ago. We were talking about it today. It's been about 10 years since I was in any class of hers that she offered, I took. This was in business school. And it's because she wasn't just a teacher, and those are really important too, but she was also an inspirer, educator, and connector. Every single class, not every semester, every single class, she brought in people to the classroom, realizing that's probably the most important value out of a business education, is to start meeting people, hearing real stories, and connecting with people who you can work with in different ways later on. So it's something she always did without fail. She made sure we all knew where to go see Guy Kawasaki talking about the art of the start when he came down to Los Angeles. And made sure we could meet him if we had a good reason to, or other entrepreneurs all over the Los Angeles area, just always surrounding us with great mentors in the business community. Just by being here tonight, I'm 100% sure Molly would let you into Molly's gang. We're all in Molly's gang, and I'm sure she would let each of you into it too. And she would also make sure that each of your interactions, it's not just networking, it's really connecting and helping people in meaningful ways, whether it's on a business or a project or an education, whatever it might be. That's the one thing I've learned from Molly. I'm very humbled to be with our other guests tonight, but most importantly, thank you all for coming out to talk with us too.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. And now, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome to the stage Guy Kawasaki, who has another bestseller out there. It's wonderful. Guy, thank you for being my mentor. Thank you for your sense of humor that gets me to laugh in the darkest of days. And I know everybody is very excited to hear from you, so come on up and
thank you
share
very
your
much.
wisdom.
So thank you, Molly. It's very nice to be here. I really love Google. I have to tell you, I spent a year working for Motorola and which was part of Google at the time. And I had a great time, and I have some very close friends here. So it's always a pleasure. I feel more welcome here than, shall I say, at that Cupertino-based company, where I don't even dare go there anymore. So I'll tell you a little bit about my past. I worked for Apple from 1983 to 87. I was Apple's evangelist to convince people to write Mac software. I left, started some software companies. I returned as Apple's chief evangelist back in 1995 because Apple was supposed to die in 1995. So I came back to help prevent that from happening. And then I left in 97 to start another company. And since then I've been a writer and a speaker. I have started another company, and then now I'm chief evangelist for a Sydney-based company called Canva. And Canva is in the business of creating or helping people create online graphics. So we're trying to democratize design, so you don't have to buy an expensive program and spend days and days learning it. So, Apple, in my mind, democratized computing, and Google democratized information, and Canva is democratizing design. And so, as you can tell, I love democracy. So that's why I aligned with Canva, and I'm Canva's chief evangelist. So the topic of the book about all these superachievers and stuff, which I'm kind of flattered to be in the book at all. But I have to tell you, this is a very good sort of insight into life if you ever think that you've arrived. So I won't tell you who did it tonight, but tonight someone said to me, I work for the company that hosts your website. I said, really? And she goes, yeah. And she said, oh yeah, we have all the stuff for Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's Kiyosaki, not Kawasaki. So, welcome to my life. So we not only all look alike, we also sound alike. And then she went on to say, so do you speak much? And I went, okay. So that's my life. It's good. It's good to have experiences like that. As long as you can laugh about it, you're doing all right. So if I were to give you the shortest synopsis of why I'm in the book, besides being Molly's friend, so how did I achieve whatever I achieved? Lots of people have lots of different ideas, but mine idea is very simple. I am just willing to work. I love to work. I am willing to grind it out. I don't consider myself smart. I don't consider myself visionary. I just will outwork people. There are people who are smarter than me. There are people who work harder than me, but nobody can outwork and be smarter than me. So I love to work. I love to grind it out. I get great satisfaction of it. And that is reflected in my writing style. The chapter that I'm in is mostly about writing. And I'll tell you, the gist of my writing is I like to vomit out the first version as fast as possible. Back up. So I like to have a complete outline, absolutely down to the paragraph level. I have an outline, and it takes me months to do that. And after I have the outline, then I want to just vomit it out as fast as possible. I want to fill out that outline. And then I go back, and to use a very gross metaphor, then it's a matter of filtering the vomit. And so you have to, pick out the undigested chunks of food to just get pure nutrients. And that's what you see in a published book. Now, you're never going to read a book of mine, right? So basically, that's my process. Get it out, remove all the undigested food, and leave just pure goodness. And it takes hours and hours and days and days. To me, the key is not good writing, it's good editing. That's the difference. A good writer is a good editor. And if you have a concept that writing is the process of getting a large advance from a traditional publisher, and now you bought a beach house with that advance, and you're sitting on the back porch on a windswept beach, and your kids are all straight A, the house is perfectly clean, all the dishes put away, your spouse is happy, everything is great, right? And you sit down, and you get a fountain pen, Mont Blanc fountain pen with an 18-karat gold nib, and you sit down to a stack of parchment handmade by Tibetan monks, And you sit there and the words just flow out from your brain, through your arm, through your wrist, to your fingertips, on your Mont Blanc, and you write in cursive this fantastic manuscript, right? And then you send that manuscript to your editor in New York, who drops everything as soon as it comes in, shuts off the computer, shuts off the phone, reads your manuscript in the next 4 or 5 hours, calls you up and says, in the history of my editorial career, I've been an editor in New York for 30 years, I have never read a perfect manuscript until today. So you get that phone call, then he continues on and says, I talked to the publicity department, and we don't know what to do. We have a big problem because Charlie Rose and Oprah and 60 Minutes all want to feature you, and they all want exclusives. We don't know what to do. And we don't know if we should sell the rights to NPR or to Discovery Channel or to, Fox. Yeah, right. No, it won't be Fox. I'll never sell a book to Fox. I would rather be poor than be on Fox. So that is not at all how it happens. It is a grind. It is a brutal grind. And a lot of people say, well, why do you write then? Well, I'll tell you, the only thing worse than writing is not writing. And that's why I do it. You have to be quasi-masochistic, somewhat OCD to be a writer. And that's what I am, in a nutshell. So I told you the key to my success. I told you the key to my writing. What else can I tell you?
Well, you could tell everyone about your new bestseller.
Yeah. So I have a book called The Art of Social Media. This is a book that I co-wrote with the person who I believe is the best social media person in the world. And I would put her up against entire agencies. So we wrote a book. It's about, it's maybe 150 pages long. It has more than 100 tips. It's very tactical. It's how to use social media, how to use it as a marketing platform. It is not about social media for social reasons. If you want to just meet your friends and roommates and college buddies and all that, this is not the book for you. This is a book about how to use social media as a marketing tool. And it's very tactical. It's devoid of duh-isms. A duh-ism is stuff like you need to engage your followers, or a duh-ism is you need to be transparent, or a duh-ism is you need a good profile. If you don't know that by now, don't read this book. And so I take it, much, much deeper. So, for example, yes, you need a good profile, duh. But then I explain that, this is what makes a good avatar. A good avatar is a photo primarily of your face, if not only of your face, asymmetric, use the rule of thirds for where you put the eyes, front lit, and don't take like a group shot with a smartphone of 12 of you and then crop your face out, because that's the only part you need and that's your avatar. So when people click on the avatar, it's all pixelated. So we go into that level of detail on the major issues of social media. And it's doing pretty well, I must say.
Very well.
Yeah. So because no one's ever written a book at this low level. If this book were a computer language, it would be assembly language, if you know what I mean. So that's that book. I'm not here to pimp my book. I'm here to pimp Molly's book. So I'm really happy, and I'm happy to be here. And Molly is Studs Terkel done right, maybe. You're too young to know who Studs Terkel is, right? Do you know? How many of you know who Studs Terkel is? Yeah, well, he wrote a book. He wrote a book where he profiled people of all sorts of professions. What it was like to be a waiter or a waitress or a truck driver. It was a very, very seminal book in my life. So that's it.
Well, thank you. Well, Guy's going to be back to answer questions in just a little bit, and let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.
His story, and he makes writing a bestseller sound so easy, but
easy. Who said it's easy?
Well, you make it look easy, I think. Anyhow, I'm very excited to next introduce Jenny Alden, who about a year ago had
I'll tell
a
my
really
story.
bad year, and I'm not going to say anything else, so come on up, Jen.
Hello, I'm just going to move these bottles.
Oh, good idea.
Sorry, I was in production in my past life. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Molly, for having me. Thank you, Google. It's really an honor to get to speak with you all tonight and share my story. When I was first approached about being in a book about superachievers, I had to scratch my head a little bit and question, what does it mean to be a superachiever? And I thought, I think it has something to do with success. But then that begs the question, what is success? Now, I think my definition might be a little different than most people on this panel, or Silicon Valley for that matter, but ever since I was a little girl, if you asked me what it meant to be successful, I would say being happy. And that's a philosophy I've held on to my whole life. But then the real question is, how do you maintain happiness in the face of great adversity? And in 2013, I got to figure that one out all on my own. And what I found were two mottos that I really held on to for my dear life. And the first one was to have an attitude of gratitude. And the second, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. This too shall pass. So if you read my story, you'll see that I had a fairy tale wedding. I married the man of my dreams. We talked of having kids and everything, and it looked like my dreams were coming true. But 10 months after this wonderful wedding, the fairy dust settled when I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Now, we found the tumor incidentally. I fell off a hammock, my head banged against cement. We thought maybe I had a concussion. So we went to the ER to make sure that there was no internal bleeding and it was okay. And I was really annoyed when I thought I had a concussion. I thought, what a waste of a perfect Sunday. Why am I in an ER? This is really annoying. But when the doctor basically said, hey, good news, there's no internal bleeding, but it looks like you might have a brain tumor, I was like, actually pretty grateful that I found that out. I was like, that's why I hit my head. That's why I'm here. And I had this sense that, you know what, it's going to be okay. And it turned out to be the size of a golf ball in the shape of an olive in my left temporal lobe, which is where your verbal logic and comprehension is. And it seemed like I would need brain surgery. And with brain surgery came the risk of losing my ability to speak and comprehend language. And the chances were that I would probably have about 10 years left to live, and that would be 10 years with chemo and radiation. I completely ignored that last part. I just knew in my heart of hearts, I have another 100 years in me. As for the verbal logic and comprehension, I was like, there's no way they're taking away my ability to speak. But if they do, I will dominate speech therapy and I will figure it out. What I knew is that I had no choice but to be positive. I thought there's no sense in worrying about this until we cross that bridge. There was nothing I could do. So I just was happy. I hung out with my friends. I went gluten-free. I worked out more. I went to Burning Man and some weddings. And then I had an open, awake brain surgery on my 1-year wedding anniversary. And Dr. Mitchell Berger, with his incredible brain mapping technique that he pioneered, saved my ability to speak and comprehend. And it turned out to be a ganglioglioma. What a beautiful word, a ganglioglioma. Only 1% of brain tumors are gangliogliomas. It will never grow back. He got the whole thing out. I didn't need any chemo or radiation. And turned out I was right. There's not much really to worry about. So good thing I didn't waste myself all that energy worrying. That was an incredible experience for me to have that unique opportunity to have family and friends, old and new, come together. I saw burned bridges mend. And after that experience, I just felt like I can do anything. What I wasn't prepared for was what happened after my brain surgery. 8 months later, I found out that my newlywed husband started to cheat on me at the time of the operation. And what felt like a double betrayal was that this girl, who was sleeping with my husband for 8 months since I was recovering from brain surgery, followed me on Facebook, was a Facebook friend, and completely knew about the whole brain surgery journey and my wedding photos and honeymoon pictures and everything, just totally aware. And as a female who loves other women and supports them and has a book club with over 100 girls on my mailing list, it leaves me tongue-tied today to even can't wrap my head around who does that to someone else. So I had just experienced the best of humanity with my brain tumor. I was now slapped with the worst of it. And my world was turned inside out and upside down. I lost about 9 pounds in 1 week. I got a new flock of wrinkles my facialist swore was not there the week before. I had complete insomnia. My body was flushing with adrenaline for like a month straight. Thank God my mom was there. She drove me everywhere because I would have gotten in a car accident for sure. I was just this numb, like zombie who could not make sense of the world. But at this time, I also couldn't ignore the glittering goodness that I was experiencing. I had friends who sent me flowers, who sent me baked goods, who showed up at my door, who took me for a mani-pedi or a night on the town, who spent the night with me, who just would hold my hand while I sobbed. I had people in the grocery store, strangers, who would give me a hug when they just found me sobbing. And I was like, wow, I feel like the luckiest girl in the world. What did I do to deserve these friends, this family, my dog, the best dog in the world? I just couldn't believe this outpouring of love that I was receiving. And every text message that would just say, hey, thinking of you, would lift me up. Like ants coming together and lifting up a raft. My friends, these wonderful people in my life kept me alive. It's crazy to think about just a year and change from now. There was one night, in addition to the infidelity and the brain tumor and other things, I had an experience that induced a 4-month-long migraine. And it kind of just fried my brain. I couldn't even add 2 and 2, really. And I was in bed, and my face was war-torn, and my heart was bleeding, and my brain didn't work. And I just was like, I have nothing right now. And I was trying to figure out how to accidentally die. Because I had heard once that if you commit suicide, you come back in your next life as a hairball. And I knew there's no way I could do that. There's no way I could come back again as a hairball, no less. I was just really trying to figure out, how do I just accidentally not have to ever wake up again? But the very next day, my friend came over and took me out, and I had the greatest time. I was like, wow, not even 24 hours ago, I didn't know if I could handle this life. And that was temporary. And a year and change later, I am so healthy, aside from this cold, healthy and happy, and my world is full of possibilities. And so what I want to leave with you guys tonight, because I'm sure everyone has their own thing going on, might not be as cool as a brain tumor, but something's going on. And if you can look for the silver lining in it, there is one, I promise you. Even if it's hard to see right now, there is a silver lining. And if you hold on to that with an attitude of gratitude, you will soar upward and onward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
I'm glad I went before her.
Thank you, Jenny. That always makes me cry to hear that beautiful
Note
story.
to self, don't follow Jenny.
And now for the person who is following Jenny, it's my pleasure to introduce Keith Powers, a dear friend. Please come up and share your story.
Sure.
Please start.
All right, well, I'm glad she kept that really light because it makes it so much easier. So I guess since we're at Google, I thought I'd package this as sort of Google speak. I feel like I'm part of the extended Google family. My wife, Michiko, works in Google, what do you call it now? People Dev. And so she's been here for about 5 years, and so my daughter Harmony, who's in the back there, coding up learning how to code. So we're here often, and we kind of feel like we're part of the Google family. And so I thought I'd package it into risk, and package risk into sort of your 20% time. And so growing up, I had role models to me. I was not what you would call an overachiever in high school. It was unlikely that I was going to go to college. I stopped doing some things that I was doing, but I'll keep parental correction. And ended up basically getting out of my environment, and then I took some advice from some of these mentors, and 2 of them were my brothers. And when I was growing up, I saw them traveling the world and taking all sorts of risks and following their passions. And so the first thing I did after I sort of changed my environment was had to get out of. I was from Boston, and I said, well, let me get out of here. And so I just kept taking risks whenever I could. And so whenever there was a path to go down, I would always take the path with the highest risk. But at that time, my 20% time was taking risks and learning about things and doing things I was passionate about. And the 80% time was actually doing work so I could pay for those other things. And I kind of was able to do that all through my 20s. And I came out here when I was about 28, after taking a trip in Nepal and spending some time with my wife trekking and in Japan, and I landed here, and then I was trying to figure out a way, how do I switch it? So how do I go from 20% of like doing stuff I'm passionate about, and then grueling away, and I'm a workaholic, I'm working nonstop, and it's not because it's just something I have to do. It's like I can't turn it off. And so I tried to figure out, how do I switch that, and how do I make the 80% the 20% and the 20% the 80%? But I also wanted to benefit humanity and do something good. And so I had an idea for a startup, and one connection point was I went to a boot camp, one of your boot camps in '98 or '99, and I thought, let's democratize transportation by letting people who can't afford a car, and so they can't get to work. Let's figure out how to get people to work by advertising. And so I had a company called Free Car, and we would wrap cars, and the whole plan was to give away cars with advertising on them so that they could pay for their cars for free, and give it to people who were driving in demographics who were driving down the 101 or in the 405 in LA, but basically get people to where they need to be for work for free with a car. And then the dot-com bubble burst. I'd sold the company, but the bubble burst, and no longer was it $10,000 to $20,000 with no inventory on the 101. So that the model kept going, but essentially I kept following my passions about how do I do things that can benefit humanity, and whether or not you like advertising or not, that's a whole other conversation. But the fact of how do you get people into a free car, which is really important if you need to get to work. But it really changed when I started volunteering for the X Prize, and I'll talk about that. There's been a whole bunch of other things, from going to Cuba and being on TV in Peru and doing a lot of other stuff. But when I volunteered for the X Prize, and how many people have heard of the X Prize at this point? How many people have seen Spaceship One model in Building 43? So when I went to work for them originally, I wasn't like a space geek, and I say that with much love now because most of my friends are space geeks. But I did see something happening in the private spaceflight industry, which was all these amazing people were getting involved. So I went from being a passive observer, like, oh, this is cool, this is going on with space, to actually an active seeker of the information. And in the summer of 2004, I was getting burnt out on a grassroots presidential campaign that I worked on when we accumulated about 10,000 volunteers in LA, and that's where I met Molly and Jennifer, and we worked on the campaign, and I got burnt out on that, and then I was really getting involved I love the space idea. So first thing that I did is I said, okay, I'm gonna start a company. Let's democratize this. This is crazy. Not everyone can pay $100,000 or $2,000 to go to space. So I'm like, space dreams. And then over the weekend, I coded up a website, and I was like, well, it'll be like a lottery system. You either pay $100 with 1,000 people, and you maybe get to go, or 100 people with 1,000. So over the weekend, I coded it up, and my wife has always been super passionate with my weekend business ideas. There was safe masks. When we had the problem with SARS, that was a weekend one I decided not to do, because business was good when it's like the funeral business. So I said, no, that's not a good one to do. But anyways, I got involved with the space industry and learning about it, and I joined the X Prize Foundation. At the time, Peter, who's an amazing salesman, he said, oh, we need a chief marketing officer, and you'd be great, but we have no money. And so I said, that's okay. Like, I'll volunteer for 4 months. And I turned away a great job back in New York, but I never wanted to move back to New York. And so I said, let's just do it. This is too good not to do. And so I said, I'll give you 4 months and we'll see what happens after the election, and then we'll take it from there. And then with that 4 months, it was just a fantastic experience. The foundation was basically bankrupt, but we had a whole bunch of volunteers, and the way that the foundation was run at the time, it was a 2-bedroom apartment, and there was a bunch of people from International Space University, which Peter had helped start, and they would just kind of come in anytime, and they would just land there, and they'd be hanging out, and then we'd have something to do, and Peter would come in and basically would say, okay, who wants to do this? Not any questions about who has the ability or anything else, and someone would go, I'll do it. And then they would just kind of run with it, and it might get done or it might not, but it was a very, coming from more of a business background and more of a process orientation, it was a little interesting, organic organization to be part of. But after the winning of the spaceship, of the X Prize, I was fortunate enough to have 2 teddy bears on Spaceship One. I get to put some ballast on it. And so my wife had 2 teddy bears, Huggy-chan and another one, I forget their name, but one looked like her and one kind of looked like me. And it wasn't like a lot of ballast, but it was something cute to kind of put on board. So we still have those, and they have stickers on the back of them now that these teddy bears flew to space. And then just sort of fast forward, after the winning of the X Prize by Burt Rutan and his team, the model switched. And I went from doing 20% time to 80%, and I joined full time. We then, Larry hosted us here for sort of a tech talk. We asked him to join the board that day. And then Peter and I, over the next 2 years, built the board out to be sort of one of the best boards in the world and figure out a strategy of how to create actually Larry really challenged us as how do you create a prize institute that can do lots of prizes. So he loved prizes, but he loved the leverage of building a prize institute that does a lot. So I stayed there for a while, and then I've continued kind of down that path to find things that I'm super passionate about that I can focus my energy on and to be supportive. And then the 20% time are things like, they keep getting better. The 20% time keeps getting better, which is, remember, the 20% now is like the work time. But I've found a way to make the work time more pleasurable. So my 20% time now is I do property development in Maui, and so it's a much more stable, long term. And I have to go there every several weeks, which is horrible. But the point is that I've tried to switch that around. And one other connection point, and I'll end on this, is I've been working with Jenny now for over a year, and I joined with a friend of both of ours, and we launched a prize, a longevity prize. And so my 80% time now is primarily focused on, besides some startups I work with, it's primarily focused on longevity and seeing what we can do to sort of speed the clock up. Because I think I have this feeling that it will happen sometime. We'll crack the code, and it doesn't mean necessarily that it's eternal, but we will crack the code where we understand how to restore homeostatic capacity, where we can start to self-heal, and we live longer and healthier. Actually, it's the other way. We live healthier, and as a result, we live longer. And so we worked on building this prize over the past year. It's $1 million prize. We have 20 teams competing from a variety of different backgrounds, meaning different approaches from stem cell to genetics to optics, and it's been super exciting. And now, as an offshoot of that, we're launching a national nonprofit or an international nonprofit that will be an umbrella organization to raise funding, because one of the things we've learned, just like with most science, is that there's not enough money that's going in there, and that the NIH money that goes in there is about $1 billion a year, but it's very low risk. And so there's some amazing people working in labs all over this world. They don't have enough funding. And so what they end up doing is they end up applying for grants in areas that they don't really want to work in. And it's the worst thing that you can do. And so these folks are in there for 50, 80. We have some of our teams who are 60, 75 years old, and they do amazing work every single day. And they're not doing it because of the money. They're doing it because they want to find a breakthrough for humanity. And so anyways, I guess my takeaway is I think all of us have personal stories of success and tragedies, and I think overcoming them is embracing the successes and the things you're passionate about and overcoming the challenges is really important. And so thanks for having me, and it's great to be here.
Thank you for sharing that. Congratulations to you both on that prize. That's amazing.
We're actually, I'm 90 and she's 110. So.
Wow. And Keith will also be back up in a moment for our Q&A. And now for our grand finale and our host tonight, Jeff Rozic. And I just have to take a moment and tell you that when Jeff was a student in my class, he was like no other student. I knew that I was witnessing one of the most brilliant people out there. And when he graduated, I put him on my board of directors, and it was one of the best days of my life. And he has been very generous with sharing his brilliance all these years, and I can't wait to hear his talk. And thank you for letting me share your story in the book. And so everyone, Jeff Rozic.
I wanted to come in with some really low expectations as the last panelist and promise that, as Jenny joked, when Molly called and started talking about a book about superachievers, I thought, well, let me see if I can introduce you to some. And as I got to understand the project she was working on and think back about all the people I've met through Molly, and then also from what I learned through Molly, which is just to approach people and forge natural connections with people in work and in personal life and so on, which is something I truly learned from Molly, I thought, well, maybe I have a little bit of a story here. Let me think about it. And if you read the book, and this is definitely a plug for the book, some patterns start to emerge. I think that Molly, who gravitates toward superachievers in her life, has figured out a handful of characteristics of people who consistently achieve things. And I think the only one that I could maybe boast a little right to play on is one that we might call not being afraid to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. I think that's something you'd find in a lot of people who just go for it. And I think you've heard an element of that in everyone's story tonight. For me, my quick version of that story is I didn't grow up in an uncomfortable zone at all, thanks to my parents. I grew up in a pretty comfortable Midwest suburban upbringing. I had educational opportunities. I started off in life wanting to be a journalist, but I had a premonition that Guy would say writing is not all it's cracked up to be sometime down the road. But I was on a very typical path through school and so on. The only thing that was really interesting to me growing up in Ohio was this .com thing that was starting to happen in the early to mid 90s and definitely in the later 90s on the West Coast. So I was in college in Cleveland, and I started scheming about how to get out to the West Coast, the digital media and entertainment startup hub that was first time through building in America. So I started packing all my credits into a few semesters so I could take some time off and get an internship in California. And I remember firing off 1,000 or more emails to pursue an internship. And I found one with a technology incubator, which was a relatively new idea, at least in the .com version that we're now pretty familiar with, incubators and accelerators. This was late 90s, early 2000s. And I had it all set up, and then by the time that January rolled around where I was supposed to move out here and do it, of course, as we've all invoked tonight, the first business setback occurred, and that was the first .com meltdown. The incubator was no more, the internship was no more, and so I just finished school, and I had to try to find the most interesting job I could find. And probably the one sub-thread through my life of getting out of my comfort zone is pursuing working with startups. There's no better way to get uncomfortable than go work for a startup. And the most interesting one I could find in the Midwest at the time was a company that was making the anthrax vaccine and selling it to the Department of Defense, and that was a very big topic at that time. Better than working in the funeral business, I would say, but not a whole lot better, especially in the 9/11 timeframe that we were talking about. So this company ended up being one of the best startups I've ever worked for. It was an old privatized state lab that became a commercial venture, a private company, and later IPO'd and is now a company called Emergent Biosolutions, full of the people that Keith described, which are incredible scientists doing work all across the biosciences. And it was just a great experience to put myself in positions project managing scientific research projects. I couldn't even get through Astronomy 101, and I'm working with brilliant world-class scientists and just trying to get out of my comfort zone and be around brilliant people at all times. And then I went back to business school, and I met a whole bunch more people like Molly, and I chose to do that in Southern California. Again, this inclination to get out here in California and be part of all these amazing technology themes and trends that were happening now in the mid-2000s, I guess, 2004, 2005. And after business school, I had an opportunity to join Google. And that one, I guess you wouldn't say is getting out of your comfort zone. It's very much a desirable job coming out of an MBA program. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me. But it was also the best of both worlds because we were trying to do something very uncomfortable, which was sell radio advertising through Google's AdWords platform, advertising platform. And I just really love this idea of a disruptive technology. And that was a great experience for a couple years. And then I actually chose to leave Google to work for a much earlier stage company in a bigger marketing role. And that's a pattern I've had a couple times over the years, is to go seek out a more high risk, high reward type situation. We're treated extremely well here at Google, as you probably know if you work here and if you've heard about it. It's very true. Everything you read about this company, it's an incredible culture and resources. So the move to go work for a startup is not an easy one, but there's a lot of peers in this amazing community that choose to do that. Or better yet, go forge your own path within this company and find a very exciting entrepreneurial project to work on. So long story short, I chose to return to Google a few years later. Very long story, very short, after a couple of rough years in the startup world. And now I'm doing something called Brand Lab, which is actually at YouTube just up the road in San Bruno. Has anyone heard of Brand Lab? It's a customer experience center where Google's background in the advertising world is on this incredibly accountable form of advertising called AdWords. You always know exactly what ROI you're getting out of your search ads, but we've forged into this world of brand advertising, which is decades and decades old, and we found that we need to work really closely with our big brand advertisers, our big customers, show them the love, show them the brand love, as we say, and become great partners with them as they take on digital marketing in a sense that we could have never imagined where we are now. You have all these social channels to manage, and all of these various audience behaviors and profiles that we never could have imagined even 5 or 10 years ago across devices and across content that we love to consume. So we're in there every single day in the Brand Lab working with our best brand advertisers to figure out how to reach and how to engage this digital audience. And it's a big challenge right now. It's probably a safer challenge than I've sought in years past because I've gone into some very risky startup situations. And right now I have all the comforts and excitement of working for Google and having access to these world-class brands and all these great marketing teams who come through our doors every day. I don't take that for granted at all. Although I can't help but wonder when will the next time be that I kind of push myself out of the comfort zone. So it's also been a little bit easier for me probably because I've had a very easygoing compared to some of the other stories we've heard tonight on the personal side of life. And my wife, we've been together for about 17 years, believe it or not. Not married that long. We didn't get married in 3rd or 4th grade, but we've been together for a very long time since growing up in high school. So we've gone on these life adventures together, and that definitely makes it very easy. Sometimes we just look at each other, having moved back to the Bay Area, moving all around to Boulder, Colorado, and Southern California. We just look at each other like, what are we doing here? We have 2 kids now, and when are we going to stop moving around and seeking new adventures and opportunities? But I guess we kind of share that DNA to pursue the pursuit of the uncomfortable and always to try to test yourself in new situations. So that's the only thread that I can find to justify my inclusion in a book like Going Supernova. But if that's truly a trait and a part of the DNA of an achiever, then I will gladly position myself for that one. So thanks again for listening to that story.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for making it. Thank you, Jeff, for hosting and making it possible. We're going to get into the Q&A. I need to, of course, though, thank Valeria, my very dear friend, who really tonight, I wouldn't have gotten through tonight without her. She has saved the day about 40 times. Thank you, Valeria, so much. Thank you. Before we start the Q&A, I just want to say that I am dedicated to helping each and every one of you with your major goals. And there's not just the book, if you decide to get a copy of the book, but I've put together an entire mentorinsight.net toolkit to help anyone, no matter where you are at life, superachieve. And there's an app called Gusto Career Coach available now on the iPhone and hopefully very soon on the Android as well. I hope you will take advantage of these programs. They're really inexpensive and they're there to help you. And call me if I can ever be of help to you, because I really do care. So I know you have some questions and you've patiently waited. So who would like to ask the first question tonight?
The question I have in your the new book, Art of Social, you advocated for giving away your book freely to get bigger distribution. How do you decide that yourself as to what's a good fit, or do you just do it if the opportunity presents and it survives your black email box, maybe?
Yeah, So in the final 3 months or so of a book, when the Word manuscript is basically more or less done, at least in my mind, I send out a message through all my social media channels requesting editors. So I want volunteer content and copy editors. So this announcement goes to about 10 million people, and about 500 people say yes, they want to do it. I send out 500 people the Word document, and about 100 actually write the comment and send me back. Hundreds, literally hundreds of comments. So I open up each Word document one at a time. I've turned on track comments, and I look at every single comment, and I fix every one. So one of the things I learned is I send this out in batches, because I don't send it out to all 2,000 people at once, because if I did that, then they'd all find the same comma, right? That's wrong. So I want people to find different bugs every time. So I send it out in stages. So I do that, and then I have to tell you a funny story. So I've done this several times, and you think, well, with hundreds of people and me reading it 50 times, by the time I send it to copy edit, it's perfect. And every time I do this, I expect the copy editor to say, in my 30 years of copy editing, I have never seen a perfect book till today, okay? So guess what happens? I send this book out, and I kid you not, okay, I kid you not, it comes back with 2,500 corrections. And I am just freaking astounded. Now, how can this be? Now, obviously, the way she counts, if a comma is in the wrong place, when she cuts it, it's 1. She puts it back, it's 2. So let's be conservative. Let's say it's 1,250 problems. My mind is boggled. So anyway, so that goes through. So now it's PDF, it's truly final. And then what I do is I say, all right, so anybody who will review the book, I will send the PDF to right now. And what happens then is you get another 2,000 or so people. And all I ask is that I ask them to fill out an online database where they put their website or blog and approximate monthly page views. And just between all of us, I never check. I just want people, if they're really trying to steal a copy, I want them to have to lie and say that they have this blog or this website and they get 2 million views a month. So I never check that, literally. So then I send this out to everybody, and of those 2,000 people, maybe 200 or so write a review. And the way I figured out, if you ever write a book, if you want to guarantee first day great reviews on Amazon, this is what you do. So Amazon turns it on, you'll know what day, at midnight Pacific. So at about 7 p.m. Pacific that night, you send an email to 2,000 of these people who promised to review it and your beta testers. And you say, listen, it's going live in 4 hours. Amazon will not let you post a review till it's live. So in 4 hours, it's going live. I would really appreciate it if you go and immediately review it, because I want to get off to a fast start. Okay? I go to sleep and wake up the next morning, 200 5-star reviews. And so that's what I did. Now, I can't tell you that I was completely open and transparent with my publisher, because just suffice it to say that New York publishers are not, theoretically trying to seed a lot of copies. There's an institution called NetGalley, where you go to NetGalley and you register to be a tester, and then you can get the book through official sort of DRM protected means. So I've used that last time. I've used just send them the PDF. And so that's what I do. I mean, that's the dirty secrets of what I do. And like many people are just amazed at how I get so many reviews in the first day. And it's so
awesome.
Actually, to tell you another funny story, when I figured out this great method, I literally have to contact Amazon and say, listen, you're not going to believe this, but tomorrow morning there's going to be 200 reviews. I don't want you to think that I have 200 false accounts and I'm giving myself a 5-star review. These people really have read it. You have to just trust me. So you have to, otherwise Amazon, logically would say, well, how is it that this book has sold, 100 copies, has 200 reviews, right? Like the math doesn't work out. So you have to forewarn Amazon that this is going to happen, and so it's probably more than you wanted to know, but that's.
No, I wanted to know that, and afterwards, I want to be fair to other people. I
Okay. So that's what I do.
So what kinds of skills, what kind of jobs do you see like in 10, 20 years? What can
You're looking at me again?
Yeah.
Ask
Or any of the other folks here.
Ask the 90-year-old.
So, I mean, my personal belief is that the more creative kids can be, or the next generation of workforce, the better position they'll be. I think there's a lot of things like basic coding and other things that'll be much more of a commodity. And the everyday things that we do now will be done through AI and through robotics and other things. So the more creative path kids can take. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't know basic things. So I love that my daughter's learning some basic coding now, but it's just to demystify it. And so when I first built my website I wasn't a coder, I was like front page, and it worked back in the 90s. It sort of demystified the mystery of the web. And then I was able to take that and move on. So I would, personally my belief is whatever you can do to make kids super creative and think for themselves, the better off they'll be long term.
I think it's really difficult to predict. That's a great question. So I'm doing something a little bit contrarian in parenting, and that's to allow the kids to get into a whole broad swath of activities where I think the modern parent line of thinking might be get them really focused on a programming language at age 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. A sport at age 2, 3, 4. I'm joking, of course, but I still think
Really?
Well, I can't program, so I can't ask them to program. But I really echo what Keith says, and I think it applies even beyond design, but to all kinds of, I guess, more micro professions that are enabled by digital. But you can be a designer, and through any number of web storefronts, sell your products to a large enough audience to make an income on, but nothing that a mass brand would consider mass. And I think that same idea could apply in education, for example. I'm a huge student of education. I watch how it changes over time, and the importance of a teacher is never going to go away. And so all the different ways that teachers interact with students, there's still going to be some magic number between one teacher and a handful up to 20-some students at a time that's going to really matter. So I think a lot of the original occupations, but in this very digitized mode where you can have a whole career with a fairly niche audience is really interesting and allows you to still have your kids pursue whatever they're actually really passionate about.
How old are you? Answer? So my theory is more along the law of big numbers, where I think, I'd like to expose my children to as much as possible. I kind of find it reprehensible. Two of my older boys are in college, that they're almost forced to declare majors practically in their senior year of high school. And I guess if you're going to be a doctor, I understand that. But anything else, I look back at what I was in a senior in high school to think that, I would have determined that my career based on the next 4 years, other than a doctor, is just incomprehensible to me. And so arguably they have even broader choices. So I'm really not pushing them in any way. I think they need a good basic liberal arts college education, contrary to some of the people you work with. And I just hope that in the law of big numbers, they get exposed to a lot of things, because, if you told me in my senior year of high school that someday I would be a writer with 13 books, I would have told you you're insane. I mean, you just, you got the wrong kid. So how do I know? And I just hope by the law of big numbers, they find something that just makes them so passionate. And this may be like a reaction to every Asian gene I have in me, because, so when I went to college in the 70s, 1970, not 1870, when I was in college in the 70s, if you're Asian American, perhaps like you, as you said, your parents wanted you to be doctor, lawyer, or dentist, right? And I don't want to stick my hand in any part of any body, mouth or body, so there goes doctor and dentist, so all was left was law. So I went to law school for literally 2 weeks. And I hated law school so much, I dropped out of law school in 2 weeks. And so that was a very traumatic thing. Asian American, 2,000 generations of my family worked to get me to this law school, and I quit after 2 weeks. Like the only thing left is suicide at this point, right? But I look back now and I say, I think that was the first time that my intelligence showed through. because many people practice law for 20 years and figure out they're miserable. I did that in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, you just never know. And it's inconceivable to me for anyone to sit here and say, I can tell you what your kids should be in 10 years. Because, if we're so smart, how come we all thought MySpace would control the world? Oops. Right? And so, I just give them a good broad education and let them have at it. I mean, that's my theory. So,
I will say, I don't have kids, but I was a kid, am a kid, have an incredible mom over there. And my parents just were always, we love you, and we don't care as long as you try. I had this unconditional love, and I noticed with my friends who had the parents who would, frame their straight A's and expect them to get to Harvard on that, they were so much more stressed and fear-driven in life. And the reason why I got my wonderful job and I work with Keith is the man who hired me, he said, Jenny, I recognize in you that you're joy-driven, not fear-driven. And that's how I got to be in the incredible position that I'm in. And that was from just the love for my parents and saying, as long as you try.
Can you teach superachieving? Are you just talking to the winners? And that there are lots of people who did all those things and are unhappy and left on the curb, and these are just the people who happen to pick the right company or whatever to go to.
I believe with every fiber of my being that you can absolutely teach anyone to superachieve. And here's why. The people and I've now had an opportunity to talk to thousands of people that have done this, and they are some of the people who have had the worst that life has to give them. That they've conquered, people that didn't even go to school, not even grammar school, people that had no money, people that were in prison, and yet they turned their life around. So it's not easy. And sometimes the other thing I have one more thing to tell you, and is you can be so close. And I recently read a book about this, about being so close and giving up. And just how close each of you could be to your own superachievement. And it's the book Good to Great, by Napoleon Hill, his book. And anyhow, he was saying he had interviewed someone who was a gold miner, and he had been drilling for gold, and he gave up. He tried, and he sold all his equipment. 3 weeks later, someone bought the equipment and found the biggest gold strike ever. So it's possible. It's not easy. There are certain traits you need to develop, and that's what I'm hoping to do with my Mentor Insight Kit. I have found 5 things. You've heard them talk tonight, our superstar superachievers, about stepping out of your comfort zone. Jenny's story of transforming adversity into opportunity. Self-exploration is another big one. Something called zigzagging. You heard Jeff's story. He was at Google, then he went Boulder, Colorado, and then over here, and now he's back at the world-renowned Brand Lab. And of course, a guy full throttle focus. When he's working on a book, there's nothing, an atomic bomb could go off, and that is not going to derail Guy Kawasaki, right? It's nothing. I'm sure he encounters all kinds of challenges. So yes, I do believe it's possible. So thank you. And if anybody needs help getting started on your way, or perhaps many of you are on your way, if you have a major goal, please don't give up on it. And these 4 people are examples. And Keith Powers with his brilliant strategy. I mean, the X Prize, I was there when he was getting it started, and they put together this battle plan. It was brilliant. I don't know how you did it, but you did, and you put together the most renowned board of directors in the history of the world. And I mean, these are not easy things, but they're all possible. Give one more round of applause. Thank you all. I know how busy you are. Thank you.